That night, the lights in New York seemed to burn brighter than usual. Inside the studio, it was standing room only, packed with people, but no one laughed, no one whispered. They didn't know what was coming, not exactly, but they felt it. Something was about to break, and once it did, nothing would be the same. Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the stage, not as a press secretary, not as a political figure, but as someone carrying a loaded truth, an information bomb, powerful forces had tried to bury for years. In her hand, a plain USB drive. It looked ordinary, almost forgettable, but she held it like a weapon. She didn't need a mic. She didn't need a script. She only needed the truth and one person to confront. That person was Oprah Winfrey, media mogul, cultural icon, gatekeeper of millions of minds. But tonight, Oprah wasn't the one asking questions. She was the one under lights she couldn't control. It was the night the narrative cracked. The night the microphone pointed in the other direction. The night the truth stepped forward. The air inside the studio was taut, stretched to the edge of silence. The stage lights focused sharply on Karoline, standing alone at the podium. Her eyes hard, steady, her stance unshaken. Across from her, Oprah sat in a black velvet chair that looked more like a throne, arms crossed, smile thin. The warmth that once made strangers weep on daytime television had dimmed. Her eyes carried something colder now, calculation, maybe even fear. A host stepped onto the center of the stage, tension thick in his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we witness a rare and pivotal moment, a collision of two great American forces. Political power and media power. He turned toward Karoline. Ms. Leavitt, according to the information we've received, you possess documentation that could fundamentally alter how the public views Ms. Winfrey. Is that accurate? Karoline nodded once. No fanfare, just purpose. She raised the USB, then, with emotion, activated the massive screen behind her. The first image appeared. Email subject line, film discussion. Oprah and Harvey, 2014. We begin with Harvey Weinstein, Karoline said, her voice cut like glass. This email shows that Oprah Winfrey was aware of Weinstein's behavior and chose to protect a film instead of the women at risk. The screen zoomed in on a single damning line. Harvey, keep things stable. Don't let small troubles ruin the project. Karoline's tone sharpened. Those small troubles were early allegations of harassment. Allegations she ignored. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some lifted their phones. Others exchanged stunned looks. Oprah stood abruptly, her voice cool but firm. That email is taken out of context. I worked with Harvey on The Butler. Nothing more. I didn't know about the allegations until they became public. A smattering of applause rose, but it was scattered. Uncertain. Karoline didn't blink. She signaled again. A video appeared. A woman, early 30s, eyes red but voice steady. My name is Sarah Thompson, she said. I worked on a Weinstein project in 2012. At a promotional event, I met Oprah. I told her what Harvey did, how he tried to trap me in a hotel room. I begged her to speak out. Sarah's voice broke, then steadied again. She looked at me, put her hand on my shoulder, and said, there are bigger things to protect. She paused. After that, I was dropped from the film. The silence in the studio was suffocating. A few gasped, a few wept. All eyes were locked on the screen. Karoline turned to Oprah. Her voice dropped, lower, heavier. She begged you for help. And you chose to stand with her abuser. Why? Some in the audience shouted, Answer her! Others still clapped, torn between loyalty and truth. Oprah gripped the arms of her chair. I don't remember that conversation. If it happened, I wouldn't have told her to stay silent. This is a character attack. She was cut off by the rising noise. The crowd was no longer silent. But Karoline stayed calm, composed, eyes never leaving Oprah. With a single motion, she called up the next slide. An internal Weinstein Company memo, allegedly written by a former assistant. And the story was only just beginning. Leavitt's voice sliced through the noise like a blade. This memo isn't vague. It's a direct request. Oprah personally asked for a quick and discreet resolution to a complaint made by a young actress. The date, the circumstances. They align exactly with Sarah Thompson's account. She turned toward the audience. This is no coincidence. The studio erupted. Shouts, gasps, disbelief. The truth. Oprah! One voice yelled. Others shook their heads, clinging to doubt. The host raised a hand, trying to restore order. Ms. Leavitt, these are serious allegations. Are you certain of the document's authenticity? Karoline didn't hesitate. Her eyes never left Oprah. Every document I have shown is backed by sources ready to go public, verified. But Sarah and others can't wait for the media to feel comfortable. They've waited long enough. She let the silence stretch before adding, quietly but firmly. And this is just the beginning. A woman in the crowd stood up, her voice trembling with rage. This is a smear job. Oprah is an icon. She's compassionate. The backlash had already begun. Conservative outlets praised Leavitt's courage. Liberal commentators accused her of exploiting pain for political gain. Inside the studio, the tension was combustible. Phones hovered in the air. Everyone was watching. No one dared blink. Karoline stood tall beneath the lights. Her expression was ice. Across from her, Oprah leaned slightly forward in her chair, hands gripping the armrests. Her polished calm was beginning to crack. Her eyes showed it, taut with the strain of what had just unfolded. The host, now clearly rattled, tried to steady the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed a volatile exchange concerning Oprah Winfrey and her connection to Harvey Weinstein. It is a sensitive subject, but one that clearly demands accountability. He turned again to Karoline. Ms. Leavitt, is there more? She gave a small nod. No victory smile, no triumph. Just focus. There's another chapter, one many have forgotten, or never knew. Her hand hovered over the console. Let's talk about the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. The massive screen behind her lit up. An image of the sprawling school campus basking in golden light. White gates, tree-lined paths, classrooms painted bright with promise. Karoline stepped aside, allowing the photo to fill the space. This school, she said, her tone measured, was marketed as a sanctuary, a beacon of hope for African girls, a place to inspire a new generation of leaders. She paused. But for some, it became the beginning of a lifetime of trauma. The room fell still, breathless. With a tap, the photo faded. A new video began. On screen, a young woman, her face partially hidden in shadow, her voice low, shaking, but determined. My name is Amina Nkosi, she said. I was 14 when it happened. The audience didn't move. The matron, Virginia, Makopo, targeted me and other girls. We reported it. We thought Oprah would protect us. She came to the school, gave a speech, promised change. But after that, nothing. Her voice cracked. Virginia was acquitted, and we were told, by staff, to forget. She swallowed. Oprah's apology was like a breeze. We didn't need words. We needed protection. The screen went black. The silence that followed was like a vacuum. Karoline stepped forward again. You knew, she said, staring directly at Oprah. You had the power to act, but instead, you hired lawyers to protect your institution, to protect yourself. Why didn't you protect them? The words dropped like a hammer. Some in the audience shouted, Answer her! Others broke into applause. But the mood was fractured, heated, raw. Oprah rose to her feet. Her voice trembled with tightly controlled emotion. "I poured my heart into that school," she said. "I flew to South Africa, met with families, made sure every system was in place. These allegations are being twisted to destroy me." But Karoline wasn't finished. She gestured to the screen again. A new document appeared, a legal contract, dated 2007. It showed a retainer agreement between Oprah's legal team and a South African law firm, months after the abuse was first reported. "This isn't care," Karoline said coldly. "This is strategy. You didn't just apologize. You paid to bury the case. You protected a reputation instead of protecting children." The audience broke. Gasps, shouts, disbelief crashing in waves. A woman in the front row wept. A man shouted, "You're no hero!" The lights burned brighter than ever, and the reckoning had only begun. A man in the back stood up, his voice raw with disbelief. "Why did you do it, Oprah?" Another audience member raised her hand dismissively, shaking her head, still loyal to the media icon. On stage, Oprah's eyes narrowed. Her voice rose with visible strain. "That document is misrepresented," she said sharply. "I did everything I could to protect those girls. This is a targeted attack," boos rang out. But Leavitt remained composed, her eyes locked on Oprah. "Amina and the other girls didn't need a symbol," she said, her voice even. "They needed protection, and you chose your image. That's the truth." The audience fractured again, some shouting, "Justice for Amina!" while others sat frozen in disbelief. The host raised a hand. "Please, order," he called, trying to calm the rising tide. Turning back to Leavitt, he asked, his tone measured but tense. "Karoline, these are grave accusations. Can you stand by the authenticity of these documents?" Leavitt nodded, unflinching. "Everything I've presented comes from verified sources, open for scrutiny. But people like Amina can't afford to wait for comfortable timelines." She turned to the audience, her voice softening but gaining force. "And we're not finished. There's more." The room held its breath. Karoline stood tall under the lights, her presence unwavering. Across from her, Oprah sat perfectly still, her hands gripping the chair, her lips pressed into a hard line. In the eyes that once radiated comfort, a flicker of unease now shimmered, like glass under pressure. The host leaned forward, adjusting his microphone, his voice lowered, cautious. "Ms. Leavitt, what else are you prepared to reveal?" She took a breath, slow and controlled, scanning the room. Then her gaze locked on Oprah. "Let's talk about another name," she said, each syllable like a needle piercing the air. "João Teixeira de Faria, known to your viewers as Joás." She pressed a button on the control panel. The LED screen behind her came to life, showing a 2010 clip from the Oprah Winfrey Show. In the footage, Oprah stood glowing on stage. Her voice rang with conviction. "He has helped thousands find hope, a healing energy unlike anything I've ever experienced," the audience murmured. The mood shifted, not yet outrage, but unease. Karoline stepped aside. She didn't need to explain. The clip had already planted doubt. But she spoke anyway, her voice rising with a sharp edge. "Joás wasn't a healer. He was an abuser, accused of assaulting hundreds of women. And you, Oprah, elevated him, gave him a global platform." She tapped again. A new video played. A woman appeared, about 40, her face lined but strong. She introduced herself. "Maria Costa. I went to Brazil because of Oprah." Her voice trembled. "I saw her show. I trusted her. I believed in Joás. I wanted healing from past trauma, but instead Joas took me to a private room, and he raped me. The room froze. I felt betrayed. Maria said, Oprah made me believe in a monster. Gasps. Some people covered their mouths. Others turned their heads away. A man shouted, Oprah, why did you do it? Leavitt stepped forward. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Maria and hundreds of others followed your word. You made Joas famous. But when the allegations emerged, you said nothing. The audience erupted again. Cries for answers clashed with chants of support. Oprah stood slowly, her voice quivering with emotion, but still controlled. I introduced Joas because I believed in his work. At the time. When the allegations came forward, I stepped away. I am not responsible for his crimes. But Leavitt didn't flinch. She gestured toward the screen. A new document appeared. A 2011 financial record from OWN, linking a donation from a Joas-affiliated organization. You didn't just introduce him, Leavitt said, her voice like ice. You profited from him. The audience's reaction cracked wide open. Some shouted, shame! Others buried their faces in shock. A woman near the front screamed, Oprah, explain yourself. Oprah's voice turned sharp, defensive. I didn't take money to promote anyone. These documents are fabricated. I won't be smeared like this. Applause burst from her defenders, but it was scattered, drowned by a swelling tide of outrage. Leavitt didn't raise her voice. If anything, she lowered it, just enough to make the weight of her words sink deeper. You built your brand on inspiration, she said. But behind it, there are lies. She signaled again. The screen lit up with a quote from a biography, Oprah's own aunt, casting doubt on her infamous childhood story about keeping cockroaches as pets. You crafted a narrative. You sold a struggle. Meanwhile, women like Maria paid the price for believing in your truth, the host cut in, his voice taut. Karoline, you've made multiple serious accusations. One more time. Can you guarantee the authenticity of everything shown here tonight? Leavitt didn't blink. Yes, she said. Every source is verified, and I'll make them public if necessary. She turned to the audience, her voice low, clear, unwavering. These women deserve more than silence. They deserve to be heard, and the truth must be exposed. The host leaned forward, his tone shifting toward closure, though tension still rippled beneath. Thank you, Karoline, he said, his voice steady but tight. We'll be back after the break. The information you've shared. The host began, voice low with tension. But before he could finish, Karoline Leavitt stepped forward. She didn't interrupt with force. Instead, she raised one hand, calmly, deliberately, as if to pause a conversation she wasn't done having. Not yet, she said, her tone resolute. There's one more piece, and the public deserves to see the whole picture. The host paused, then stepped back slightly with a nod. He understood now. This moment no longer belonged to him. Karoline returned to the control panel. Her fingers moved with practiced ease across the touch screen. Behind her, the LED screen lit up once more. But this time, no face appeared. Instead, a thread of emails. Subject line, confidential, production issues, publicity expectations, no narration was needed. The text filled the silence, lines of internal correspondence between studio executives, PR teams, and Oprah's name recurring throughout. Not as a distant figure, but as an active participant. Then a single phrase appeared, highlighted in bold, read, We should ensure Monique's narrative remains off-message. Oprah will handle it. Karoline looked up, her gaze shifting from icy to solemn. "This isn't just about bad blood between celebrities," she said, her voice low. "This is how Hollywood silences women, especially black women, who don't follow the unwritten rules, and Miss Winfrey played a role." The air thickened. No one moved. The cameras slowly zoomed in on Oprah's face, not as the interviewer, but the one now being questioned under a harsh light. Monique starred in Precious. Leavitt continued, her tone turning prosecutorial. "A film you produced, but when she refused to promote it overseas without compensation, her career vanished." She tapped the screen again. A video played. Monique appeared, her voice unwavering, her anger tightly coiled. "I told Oprah I had a family, a talk show, a comedy tour," she said, eyes burning. "I wasn't obligated to fly to France for free. After that, the word spread. I was difficult." Suddenly doors slammed shut. Gasps rippled through the audience. Whispers spread like sparks in dry brush. Leavitt turned back to Oprah. Her tone sharpened. She stood up for her rights. "And you punished her. You used your platform to blacklist a woman who dared to say no. How do you explain that?" A new wave of voices crashed over the studio. "Oprah, speak!" Some still clapped, out of loyalty. Others crossed their arms or leaned forward, waiting. Oprah rose, tall and composed, but her voice carried a clear edge of frustration. "I supported Precious because it told a vital story," she said, each word heavy. "Monique made her own choices. I had no role in what happened to her career. These accusations are baseless." Scattered applause followed, but this time it faltered. It couldn't drown out the shifting tone in the room. Karoline didn't retreat. She clicked once more. The screen lit up with a new set of emails, allegedly between Oprah and a top Hollywood producer. Dated 2010, they were short, clinical, but devastating. One line stood out, written plainly. "Monique's personality is an issue. Move forward without her." Oh, Karoline didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This isn't conjecture. This is you, Oprah. Dismissing her, shaping her reputation with one sentence. And Hollywood listened. The crowd's reaction came in waves. Some people groaned. Others stared, stunned into silence. Then, "Why did you do it, Oprah?" a man shouted from the back. Nearby, a woman shook her head, eyes damp, lips trembling, but still loyal. Oprah turned toward Karoline, her eyes flashing. "That email is fake," she snapped, voice rising. "Fabricated. I've spent my life opening doors for people." But the words seemed to bounce against a wall of doubt now rising around her. And Karoline stood there, silent, letting the evidence, and the silence, speak louder than any accusation. "Monique's career was her own doing. I'm not responsible for her choices." Oprah's words drew fresh applause from loyal fans. But the atmosphere had changed. Doubt crept into the crowd like fog, through broken glass. Audience members exchanged wary glances, applause now laced with hesitation. Leavitt didn't flinch. "Not just Monique," she said, each word deliberate, her voice cutting like a blade. "You shaped Hollywood. You decided who rose and who got erased." She raised her hand slightly and signaled. The screen behind her shifted again, this time to a stark list of names. Actors, writers, directors, figures in the industry allegedly pushed out or punished after clashing with Oprah's influence. The host leaned forward, his tone urgent. "Karoline, you're painting Oprah as a gatekeeper for all of Hollywood. That's a serious claim. Can you prove it?" Leavitt nodded, calm and unshaken. These testimonies and documents come from vetted sources. They're available for independent verification, but the pattern is undeniable. Oprah's power, her brand, has a cost. She turned, her voice softening just enough to pull the audience closer. Monique paid it. So did others. Tension crackled in the air. All eyes remained fixed on her, some with admiration, others with rising discomfort. The studio lights caught the edges of the USB drive in her hand, its tiny frame suddenly symbolic. A modern Pandora's box. Across from her, Oprah sat rigid, her fingers gripping the chair's arms, her expression caught between disbelief and fury. The host, sweat beading at his temples, adjusted his mic with a shaky breath. "Karoline," he said, voice faltering but trying to hold control. "You've brought forward incredibly serious allegations. The nation is watching. The world is watching. Is there more?" Leavitt exhaled, her gaze sweeping across the crowd, then landing on Oprah. "We've talked about Harvey Weinstein, the South Africa school, Joas, Monique." She paused. "But this," she continued, her voice dropping into a low, potent rhythm, "is the piece that connects it all." She pressed a button. No image appeared, only a voice. Oprah's voice, from a private recording, low, clear, unmistakably her. "We need to keep Harvey stable. If this gets out, the whole project collapses." The studio gasped. Shock rippled through the air like shrapnel. Murmurs exploded into chaos. A woman covered her mouth. A man whispered, "No way." Leavitt didn't waver. "That recording," she said, steel in her tone, "was made in 2013. Oprah, speaking to a business associate. She knew what Harvey Weinstein was. She chose to protect her brand, not the victims." The audience erupted. Some jumped to, their feet shouting, "Oprah, how could you?" Others sat frozen in disbelief. Oprah stood abruptly, face pale, voice shaking with fury. "That recording is fake," she said, nearly shouting. "I never said those words. This is a political hit job, a conspiracy to destroy me." Her fans clapped, but the applause sounded thin, scattered, drowned in a rising chorus of boos. Leavitt stepped forward, voice low, unwavering. "You can deny it, but you can't erase the truth. You knew about Harvey, about the girls in South Africa, about Joas, about Monique." She looked directly at Oprah, her final words cutting clean. "You didn't just build an empire. You protected it at any cost." The room erupted. Some screamed for justice. Others raised phones, recording what was quickly becoming the most explosive television moment in recent memory. "Explain yourself, Oprah!" A woman shouted. "Karoline's right!" A man yelled from the upper tier. Oprah moved closer to the podium, her composure gone, her finger pointing. "You're a tool!" she spat. "A pawn in some dirty political game. I've spent my life uplifting people, and you come here to destroy me?" The room split in two, half applauding, half booing, all of them loud. The host tried to intervene, raising his hands. "Please, everyone, calm down!" He turned to Oprah, his voice nearly drowned in the noise. "Do you have anything more to say?" But Oprah didn't respond. She turned, her jaw clenched, her heels clicking hard against the floor. She stormed off stage without another word. The studio erupted into a whirlwind, cheers and outrage overlapping like crashing waves. Leavitt stood, unmoved. She faced the audience. "Oprah may have left," she said, her voice low but fierce. "But the truth stays. Victims like Sarah, Amina, Maria, Monique, they deserve to be heard." I'm here. For them. The audience rose. Some clapped. Others stood frozen, stunned by what they'd just witnessed. The host, looking as though he'd just run a gauntlet, took the mic again. Karoline, this is a monumental moment. How do you feel? Leavitt looked into the camera. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, but her voice didn't waver. I'm not here to tear people down, she said. I'm here to lift up the truth. The people hurt deserve justice, and I won't stop until they get it. Thunderous applause. The studio seemed to shake with the weight of it. She sat down, her body still rigid, her hand still wrapped around the USB drive. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The host turned back to the crowd, trying to salvage control. We've just witnessed a historic confrontation. Karoline, any final words? Leavitt rose once more, her voice calm, her eyes sharp. The truth doesn't end here. What we saw today, that's only the surface. Keep digging, stand for justice, the audience roared. And as the lights dimmed and the segment closed, Karoline Leavitt walked off the stage, not just a press secretary anymore, but the face of a reckoning that had only just begun. After the last audio clip played and the chaos faded into a stunned silence, the host leaned into the mic, his face tense and eyes darting across the shaken audience. Thank you, Karoline Leavitt, he said, voice trembling, barely masking the weight of what had just unfolded. This was an unforgettable conversation. We'll be back after the break. But the audience didn't move. Phones glowed like fireflies across the darkened studio. Recording, uploading, reacting. No one wanted to miss a second. No one wanted to look away. Outside the studio, the world ignited. Social media platforms exploded. Within an hour, hashtags like Oprah Wam Oxoff, Jara Leavitt Truth Bomb, and Justice for Monique trended worldwide. One post read, Karoline Leavitt just did what no one else dared, made Oprah walk off live television, but the backlash came just as fast. This is a coordinated hit job. Oprah is a beacon of hope, not a villain, one user wrote. Right-wing media hailed Leavitt as a crusader for truth, flashing headlines like, Press Secretary dismantles, Hollywood royalty. Meanwhile, left-leaning outlets called her a political opportunist. Leavitt weaponizes victims to attack a cultural icon. Online battle lines were drawn. Each side thundered like armies marching toward a digital civil war. Backstage, Karoline sat alone in a narrow dressing room, the overhead light too harsh, the silence too loud, the USB still in her hand, her grip clenched tight. Her phone buzzed endlessly with texts, alerts, calls. She didn't answer. She didn't feel victorious. She felt heavy. Faces flashed in her mind. Sarah, Amina, Maria, Monique. She'd spoken for them. But now she felt the full gravity of what she'd unleashed. The storm wasn't outside anymore. It was inside her. The door burst open. An aide leaned in, breathless. Karoline, there's a swarm of reporters outside. They want a statement. Now, she nodded numbly. But something inside her shifted. Not fear, not regret. A deep, uneasy doubt. Had she done the right thing? Or just started a war she couldn't control? Back online, the world continued spinning in chaos. An independent journalist posted, "This feels calculated. Is Leavitt speaking for the victims or for an agenda? Trump? Someone else?" Thousands reshared it. The tone had changed. The questions were no longer about Oprah. They were about Karoline. "Just another fame seeker riding the outrage wave," a venomous tweet read. "Trump's puppet." Another accused. Karoline scrolled briefly before tossing her phone aside. She tried to be stoic, but it stung. At the same time, cracks were forming in Oprah's camp. The mogul went live on OW, her own network, with a brief, controlled press statement. Her face was composed but pale, her tone dignified but defensive. "I have spent my life lifting people up," Oprah said. "I will not let today's allegations define me." Her supporters rallied behind her, but something was off. The response didn't land with the weight it once would have. Our ratings dipped. Sponsors made quiet calls. A few even pulled ads. Worse still for Oprah, survivors began speaking out. A former student from the South Africa school. A screenwriter blacklisted after calling out Weinstein. Monique tweeted a single word. Finally. Back at the White House. Leavitt faced an emergency meeting in the West Wing. An advisor warned her with a grave expression. "You've kicked a hornet's nest. They're coming for you now. Be ready for leaks, deep dives into your past, anything to break your credibility." She nodded, jaw clenched. She had expected this. But expectation didn't make it easier. Later that night, exhausted and alone in her office, she paused when a new notification buzzed on her screen. An anonymous message read, "Thank you for speaking for those of us who've been silenced. Don't give up." She stared at the words for a long time, not crying, but close. The next morning, pale sunlight streamed through the press room windows. Karoline stood at the podium in front of a tightly packed room of reporters. Outside the building, protesters and supporters clashed behind barricades. Inside, the silence was razor-sharp. She took a deep breath. "I'm not here today to declare victory," she began, her voice clear but not triumphant, controlled like a person walking a tightrope. "I'm here to ask that everyone, media, public, lawmakers, look at the evidence. Harvey Weinstein, the South Africa school, Joas, Monique. The truth doesn't belong to me or to Oprah. It belongs to the victims." She held up a printed stack of the documents she'd referenced on air. "All of this is ready for public review. Transparency is the first step toward justice." Cameras flashed. Journalists scribbled. But behind their lenses, even they seemed unsure what side history would fall on. The video from the talk show hit YouTube. Millions of views within hours. The comments section became a war zone. "Leavitt is a hero. Oprah is being destroyed. For nothing. Truth doesn't have a party. It has evidence. You just handed the culture war another match." Karoline had changed how the world viewed Oprah. But she also shattered something sacred. Public unity. The idea that some icons were above scrutiny. She had exposed the truth. But at what cost? The lesson. In today's world, where media and perception shape reality in real time, the line between courage and consequence is razor thin. Karoline Leavitt believed she was standing for justice. And maybe she was. But the fallout shows the price of speaking truth to power, especially when that power wears a beloved face. The audience, us, must wrestle with more than just who to believe. We must ask, do we have the resolve to seek truth, even when it threatens everything we admire? Because in this era, truth is not a destination, it's a battle.